The Tennessee Titans now know when they are rescheduled to play the Pittsburgh Steelers after the first NFL game postponed by a COVID-19 outbreak. Getting back into their own building depends on the results of continued testing. The Titans outbreak expanded by 2 more players testing positive on Friday, pushing the team's total to 14 within the past week. The outbreak forced the NFL to postpone Tennessee's game from Sunday to October 25th in Week 7, forcing the Steelers into their unplanned bye. Pittsburgh now will play Baltimore on November 1st, with the Ravens bye now pushed to Week 7 instead of Week 8, which had been the bye for both teams. Joining us now from Charlotte, North Carolina to talk more is Roger Green. Roger, officials from the NFL and the Players Union were in Nashville on Friday. They had a meeting with the Titans and reviewing the way that the team is handling this matter. We talked about this before, about this being a very public situation, very public outbreak. We thought that we were going to go back onto the field, back onto the courts in 2020. We were excited about that, and now we can see that things are coming to a little bit of a pause.
Absolutely, Nietzsche. This is going to be an interesting NFL season. It's not, I believe, going to be the team with the best physical prowess that's going to be the most successful, but I think it's going to be the teams that have the best mental fortitude. Because when you start taking away and rescheduling teams' games as well as their bye weeks, it has a mental strain on them. When they get the schedule at the beginning of the year, most of those players begin to mentally think about when they're going to be able to take a break. And when you're like the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're forced to take a break in Week 4 as opposed to another week, or when you're scheduled for a Week 8 bye like the Ravens, but you're told you're going to have to go a week earlier. All of those things shift your planning, shift the way you work out, shift the way that you plan for games, shift the way that you compartmentalize from a mental perspective on how you'll get through a grueling 16-week season.
That's a very great point that you brought up, Roger. Not only the mental capacity, but also just with everything that's going on surrounding what is happening with this global pandemic. That mixed with, as you mentioned, their mental thought process on how they planned out their season is definitely going to be a unique one. Do you think that we will be able to finish this season in general?
I think so much money and time is invested. So come hell or high water, even if they have to extend the season like the NBA had to do, because if you think about it, NBA, we're playing our finals now in October, which is typically in June, July. And so I think NFL will kind of work around it, but it's spilling over into not just those teams. We understood over the weekend that even Cam Newton of the New England Patriots became positive, and that affected the Kansas City Chiefs playing them. So I think it's starting to trickle down in multiple different ball clubs throughout the NFL, and it's something that we're going to have to watch closely, just as we're watching every industry as it relates to COVID.
Each new positive test that they have, Roger, requires the team's infectious control center officer to track down everyone who has been in contact with those people. That process also is one that we can't take lightly, because this is something that can spread. Share your thoughts on, this is not a concentrated scenario. If a person is infected, there's a possibility of them extending this to friends, family, coaches, trainers. This thing can move pretty quickly. Overall, do you feel that we should? I know you mentioned that there's being money that is spent and that, at the end of the day, we want to continue. But do you think that we can or that we should?
That's a very, very hard question. It all depends on how closely people stick and adhere to the guidelines. I know the Tennessee Titans, even though they have found so many positive accounts of the COVID, they attest that they're following the procedures. So the skip tracing, the tracing on trying to figure out contact is very hard and difficult, because it basically spans multiple different bureaus, from the CDC to local agencies to the ball club. So it's very, very difficult, Nietzsche. I think we have a lot of moving parts, but we have to be very, very careful. I think years from now, we're going to all look back and say that we all came in contact with COVID in some way, shape, or form and didn't necessarily realize it, because we don't necessarily do the contact tracing if we don't have a positive or get tested. And so it's something that's very serious that in years to come, I think we'll look at and be surprised at how many of us came in contact with it.
Absolutely. Roger is certainly looking forward to seeing what this sports season brings us and what we can look forward to. Roger, thank you so much for joining us today.
Nietzsche, it's always a pleasure talking to you.